My company is an empowerment company. I believe in teaching people how to deal and heal their own problems. And so that's one of the things I'm going to be doing tonight. That's why I always tell people to bring a notepad and pencil, because I'm going to tell you how to make supplements that I sell for, you know, expensive prices, and some of them. I'm going to show you how to make some of these devices that I'm making, so you, if you want to, you can make your own devices to protect yourself from electromagnetic radiation, from nuclear radiation, from chemtrails, from genetically engineered microbes, all kinds of stuff. So I believe in empowerment. And so we're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you how to do this stuff and explain to you how to do this stuff. It's actually very simple. The physics and behind some of this stuff is extremely sophisticated, but once you actually figure out all the physics and how to do things, the actual making of these things are very simple. So for example, with like these probiotic brews, you take a few microbes, you throw some molasses and water in a bucket, you throw a few ingredients in, and you can have extremely nutrient-rich, high-ormus supplements and superfoods. And we'll talk about a little bit about that, because this talk tonight has a lot to do with these things. So anyway, and in that vein, Catherine and Marcia both sell Simplexity blue-green algae products, and this is one of the products I recommend, particularly for getting nuclear radiation out of the body. It comes from Klamath Lake, Oregon, and people have been asking me lately, is that lake contaminated now that Fukushima radiation is coming over to the US? And it's not, because of the position of that lake and the particular part where the algae is coming from. It's shielded by mountains, so the radiation drops down to the earth before it gets to the lake. And I'm actually going to teach you how to make an artificial mountain to do the same thing, because these mountains aren't just blocking winds to protect this stuff. These mountains actually generate energy that knocks the stuff out of the sky. So we're going to talk about that. But blue-green algae is one of my favorite things in general for nutrifying and detoxifying the body, but it's also phenomenal for pulling radiation out of the body, and especially with the amount of radiation that's been dumped into the ocean just from the Fukushima accident. Forget about all the other accidents that we don't hear about. There's an ungodly amount of radiation. Back between March, when the Japanese reactor accident happened, and the end of May, the Japanese Meteorological Research Institute measured 13.5 quadrillion becquerels of radiation that escaped into the ocean. 13.5 quadrillion becquerels, that's 13.5 million becquerels of radiation that went into the ocean just in 2 months. And then they stopped measuring it, because it was increasing and becoming so astronomical. The Japanese government was actually afraid that the government of Japan, if the truth came out about what was really going on, they were afraid that the government of Japan would fail and Japan would no longer operate as a state. This is what the Prime Minister of Japan, Prime Minister Khan, who just resigned in August, this is what he admitted after he got out of office, that TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, they were so at a loss for what to do about this massive radiation leak that they were going to just walk away from it and let it fissure out into the environment and just walk away from it. And they were terrified that if the truth came out about the massive amounts of radiation coming out of that everybody would just leave Japan and Japan would no longer exist as a country. So this is the level of radiation that's coming out of there. It's also the level of the lack of truth around this accident. That radiation got to the United States within a couple of weeks, and it's been wafting around the globe ever since. The United States and Canada, in their wisdom, in April, they have monitoring stations around North America for monitoring radiation, and they started measuring the increase during the month of March and April. And so instead of expanding their monitoring to a wider range of radionuclides, they actually stopped monitoring everything, even the stuff that they monitored previous to the accident. So you cannot get any reliable information about the types and levels of radiation that are coming into this country. But I can tell you it's astronomical. It's definitely more than the Chernobyl accident. The Chernobyl accident poisoned 2 million square miles at least, and 1 million people have died from it, and millions more will continue to suffer and die from it over the years. I actually had a client who became a quadriplegic from being exposed to Chernobyl radiation, and she was in Lithuania. She wasn't even in Russia. And so these radiation leaks, this is not new. This has been happening for decades. There are thousands of leaks globally every year that go unreported because this stuff is heavily controlled in the media. As you can see, we're not seeing very much at all in the mainstream media here about what's going on. And so I'm seeing this, when I saw this occur, I knew immediately what was going to happen. I knew that it was going to be covered up and it was going to be lied about because it was bad, and it was pretty obvious how bad it was. And so the first thing I did was I ordered $2,000 worth of sprouting supplies because I wanted to get seeds that were uncontaminated. So I immediately plopped it down and got sprouting seeds. And then I started thinking about what can I do to solve this problem for me. So all of this stuff that I do is really out of greed for me. It just so happens that the things that I do to save my butt happen to help other people, so I share it. And so I was sitting in my office, and I was thinking about what I could do, because one of the things that we do, and by the way, by training I'm an electrical engineer. I have this weird background in medicine and biology and chemistry and electrical engineering and natural health. I've been to Hippocrates and through their educator program, but long before that I was already helping people heal so-called incurable disease. There's nothing that's incurable. When you understand how to regenerate cells and regenerate the human mind and the emotions, there's nothing that can't be healed. And so also one of the basic tenets that I realized a long time ago, being an engineer and looking at the physics of this world that we live in, this reality that we live in, is that we're just living in a big matter-energy system. And so all of these polarities of energy that create these problems, when that energy is disseminating through the universe, the exact opposite polarities of energy are also creating the solutions. So you can be guaranteed that when there are these nuclear problems or these genetically engineered microbes or genetically engineered food or pesticides or herbicides or pollution or polluting fuel systems and energy systems, there already are the antidotes to those out there. And being an engineer and having worked on this stuff back in the early 90s, I worked with people who developed free energy technology, water-fueled technology. There was a man named Yul Brown. You can check this out on the internet. Y-U-L, Brown, B-R-O-W-N. He developed water-fueled technology. And that water-fueled technology, basically they pulsed electricity through water in a very special way. It would separate the water into a fourth phase of water that is like, it's a gas, but it's not steam. We have liquid, solid, and steam. Those are three phases that we know of water. Well, there's a fourth phase, and it's this stoichiometric mixture that is a gas, and when you ignite it, it implodes back into liquid water. So you can take polluted water, and you can ignite it in one of these engines, turn it into the gas, ignite it, it will leave the pollutants behind, and then here's the cool part. You can take the gas that's produced, and you can make a flame with it, run a torch off of it, and you can burn the waste that's left behind that you just purified out of it, and you can transform it at the atomic level and the subatomic level into non-toxic elements. So you can even take radioactive nuclear waste, and I've seen this done with teams of physicists and engineers and boatloads of instrumentation measuring this. You can take radioactive waste and radioactive elements and make them non-radioactive. You can do alchemy on them. You can convert one element into another. So just with nuclear radiation, there's already been a solution for 40 years to neutralize it. And this has been known. It's been proven. It's out there. Why isn't it being used? Well, I can tell you, I've actually had dinner with a man who is the CEO of one of the largest companies in the U.S. for disposing of nuclear waste. And he was a multi-millionaire. And I was having dinner with him, and it went from one engineer to another. He was a PhD in nuclear engineering, and I said, look, we've got this technology that can neutralize radiation, just take a look at it. He absolutely would not even consider it. It's impossible. It goes against the laws of physics. Well, there's this new physics. Take a look at it. No, 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 no. And that's the attitude, because these people are making huge amounts of money off nuclear waste disposal. The entire industry is making huge amounts of money off of this stuff, and they have absolutely no interest in alternative fuel technologies. They don't have any interest in any alternative ways of cleaning it up. They just want to keep doing business as usual, polluting the planet, and hiding how toxic this stuff is. The average nuclear reactor has a lifespan of about 60 years, and most of the ones in the United States are reaching their lifespan end. So we've got a major problem coming about with what we're going to do with all this stuff. So the good news is, if you understand the basic tenets of the universe, for example, that energy flows throughout the cosmos in spiral fractals. We'll get into that in a moment. And there's always polarities of energy. This energy that creates these problems, it also creates a solution simultaneously. So I've consistently worked with people who have solutions to these problems. I've also worked with a man out in Arizona named Dr. Medicine Wolf. Some of you guys might have heard of this guy. He started a company named Bio Gold, which is a supplement company. They're high Ormus supplements. And he's got a device that can neutralize radiation. Okay? And there are others. There are many others. So the good news is, it doesn't really matter how bad it gets. Ultimately, it will get better. But however bad it gets, we already have the solutions. We already have the solutions. So people call me up all in fear and worried, oh my God, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? What about the government? And I tell people, don't worry about it. Understand the solutions are already out there and start looking for the solutions. So I'm going to tell you about some of these solutions to some of these major problems. But getting back to this concept that how energy flows, I want to throw out a few basic concepts to you guys so that when I start talking to you about how to actually do some of this stuff, it'll make sense. Because it'll sound like total nonsense. I mean, it sounded like total nonsense to me years ago when I was told about this stuff. It's like, yeah, right, how can that be? But like I said, energy flows throughout the cosmos, from the galactic down to the subatomic, in spiral fractals. What's a fractal? Fractal is just a branching, like a tree, like a lightning bolt, like your body. There are structures throughout the cosmos. Your DNA is a spiral fractal. So energy throughout the galaxy, if you look at galaxies, what do they look like? They look like pinwheels. They're spinning because the energy throughout the cosmos of all types is spiraling. The energy that's flowing through the wires in this building lighting these lights, they're electrons flowing in spirals. They're not, when I was an electrical engineer, when I was in school, I was taught that electricity flows in a wave up and down like this. Well, actually it doesn't. It flows like this. And when you're looking at it from the side, it looks like it's going like this. But in truth, they're spiraling through the wires. So if you know that, and you know, for example, that you've got all these electrons flowing through these wires and they're doing this and they're all chaotic, you can take a little device like this, if you make it right, which you can do in muffin pans in your own kitchen. I'm going to tell you how to do it. And you can stick it on the main breaker box, the main breaker of your house or apartment, and it will make all of those random spiraling electrons line up, become parallel, and when they're flowing through the wires in your house, they'll put out much smaller fields through anything that they're passing through, and that will radically reduce your exposure to electromagnetic radiation. How cool is that? And you can do it with a few simple ingredients. So we'll get into that. So the point is, there's always solutions. So when you see some crazy new thing like, you know, like now they've got space aliens landing on Earth and they're gonna neutralize everybody and cut them in half or whatever, you know, whatever crazy next thing that comes, don't worry about it. Start getting on the great Oracle Google and do a few magic hand movements and some of this, and I'll guarantee you will find the solutions. You start looking around, you'll find the solutions. We're living in one of the greatest times on this planet for the dissemination and access to information. Did you know, for example, that you can go online and you can ask a Nobel Prize winner a question? You can go to the Nobel Prize website and ask a Nobel Prize winner a question, and they'll put your question in a pot, and if you win the lottery that month, you get to ask them a question. That's mind-blowing. Did you know that you can take a full 4-year course load from MIT online for free? Free! You can Google this. MIT OpenCourseWare. Google that. You will find MIT's full curriculum, every single class they have, on video in complete fullness. I took 300-400 level crystallography courses to learn how to do this stuff, which I'm going to show you. Part of what we do and what we work with is Ormus elements, crystals and things. We're going to talk about this. And for people that, sometimes I go places and people think that this stuff is new age woo-woo nonsense. Well, in fact, it's heavy, heavy duty quantum physics, and all you got to do is go take some crystallography courses on MIT, and you will see that there are heavy duty scientists that are at the cutting edge on this planet that are using crystals to do all kinds of amazing stuff and other things. So, we got solutions. That's the cool thing. And it's my job to find them and bring them out. So I'm sitting in my office one day, and I'm looking out the window, and you know, I'm right off of I-95 north of here, and we're under the jetways up and down the East Coast, because all the planes fly up and down the coast when they're going down the East Coast. And I'm just looking at all these chemtrails in the sky over my property. And for a long time I had been thinking about, man, there's got to be a solution to this. And the cool thing is, and David Wolf points this out too, but the solutions are always very simple. And they're very clever. They don't take a lot of high technology. They may take a lot of high concept. They may take a lot of heavy-duty physics or engineering or math. But in fact, when you actually make them and do them, it's simple and anybody can do it. So I'm looking at these chemtrails and I'm thinking, gosh, there's got to be a way of dealing with that stuff. And it just so happened that one of the things that we do is we manufacture a scalar energy device called a stress shield. I've got one on me. What this thing does is it actually mimics what the brain does, and it mimics what the Earth does. And it puts out about a 15-foot radius, high frequency field called scalar energy. And you're going to be hearing more and more and more about scalar energy and scalar this and scalar that, because more and more people are discovering this stuff. A few years ago when I talk about this stuff, it's like, nobody knew about this stuff. Now, if you get in Gabriel Cousins' emails, he's sending out emails talking about scalar supplements. He's got scalar iodine and scalar this and scalar that. And all that means is that these supplements have been bombarded with this very, very high frequency energy that is akin to human consciousness itself. In the olden days, they called this energy the ether. But it's a high frequency energy. I think of it like God consciousness. It's this ultra high frequency energy that travels faster than the speed of light, and it passes through everything. It flows through the whole cosmos, from the galactic through subatomic particles. It passes through matter like it's not even there. And it's flowing all the time, constantly, 24/7. People give it different names. Some people call it zero-point energy. Some people call it tachyon energy. Some people call it Rife energy. But it's just high-frequency energy that's up in the range of human consciousness. It can pass through a planet like it's not even there. So the whole cosmos ultimately is made of this energy. And when that energy slows down and coagulates, it turns into matter. And it just so happens that you have this really, really cool scalar energy generator in your house. It's called your brain and your nervous system. So all of us are walking around, and our brains and our nervous systems are generating this high-frequency scalar energy, and that's how we create our reality. You've heard the concept, we create our reality, right? Law of attraction, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, if it's not just some new age woo-woo nonsense, then there has to be a mechanism where you're really, truly, somehow creating this physical reality. Well, the way it works is this. Your brain and your nervous system, they have these minerals in them that are superconducting. And all superconduction is the ability to conduct electricity with zero resistance. But when you have superconductivity, you get really, really weird physics. For example, you get anti-gravitation. A superconductor will repel a gravitational field. So if you've ever heard David Wolf talk about Ormus, these elements are called Ormus elements, or ORME elements, O-R-M-E-S, or O-R-M-U-S, which stands for orbitally rearranged microclustered elements. It's just a name. All it means is that these minerals, there's a certain handful of minerals, particularly in the platinum group on the periodic chart. These minerals, they're inside your body, they're superconducting, they're anti-gravitational, and they are, because they're superconductors, they can pick up extremely, extremely weak fields. So weak, in fact, when these minerals exist in soil, they can pick up all of the gravitational fields and other fields from all of the planets and objects that you can see in the sky. So at nighttime you see all those twinkling stars, everything that's up there, and even the stuff you can't see, the gravitational fields from all of that is affecting these superconducting minerals in the soil, and guess what? They're also in your body and they affect you. So your body has these superconducting minerals, these ormus minerals, in your brain and in your nervous system. They plug into these junctures throughout the brain and the neural pathways and along the nervous system that just so happen to correspond with what the Chinese call the acupuncture meridians. So your acupuncture meridians are nothing more than little black holes throughout your body. They're black holes that are interdimensional, superconducting portals to other dimensions of time and space. So when you hear philosophers and mystics and shamans and gurus and swamis talk about we're multidimensional beings and we're all one, well, we are. We are because we've got this scalar wave generator full of these superconducting ormus minerals in our brain and throughout our nervous system along all of these junctures that the Chinese call the acupuncture meridians, and along your spine they have some really big ones along your spine that correspond to the chakras. All right? And guess what the chakras are? Aren't the chakras spiraling vortexes? Isn't that what everybody says? They're like, you've got these vortexes and they're chakras and they correspond to colors. What they are is they're frequencies of energy coming through. There's this superconducting scalar energy coming through your spine and your chakras, which are they're just big nodes of these superconducting ormus minerals along your spine, along your nervous system, and you're putting it out all the time. Your brain's putting it out all the time. So when you're sitting here and whatever you're focusing upon, you will create superconducting frequencies, high frequency scalar energy constantly. And if that energy has enough duration and intensity, it goes out into the quantum field, it'll slow down, coagulate, and come back into the body, and it creates physical structures in the body. It actually creates the physical structure of the body. So that's one way that you're creating your reality all the time. You're physically recreating your body moment by moment by using the scalar wave generator that God gave you up in your head to put out this high frequency energy that slows down and coagulates, comes back into the body through these ormus elements and creates physical structures. I actually worked with a man named Dr. Art Martin, who on 2 occasions, 2 separate women, both of them had been in car wrecks, both of them had spinal injuries, injured their C3, 4, and 5 vertebrae, and one lady, the bones fused together into one chunk of bone, and she was in a lot of pain, and her life was a mess, and she was a train wreck. The other lady, same deal, except the doctors had wired her vertebrae together, and they fused together into one chunk of bone. She was in a lot of pain, and she's got this wire in her neck. So Art Martin works on both of these women, separate occasions, just works on their mind for 4 hours, 2 2-hour sessions. And in both cases, these women's neck vertebrae returned to normal. So they went from one fused chunk of bone into normal vertebrae. Okay? And here's the kicker. The lady with the wire in her neck, the wire disappeared. Okay? That is the power of your mind. If you line up the conscious and unconscious minds, if your body and mind are pure enough, if you're not eating garbage and double cheeseburgers and stuff that's clogging up that superconductivity in your nervous system and your brain, then guess what? You can create more scalar energy that will flow more strongly and come back through the body and recreate that body more strongly. And so Art has figured out how to get people's conscious and unconscious minds to line up and physically restructure matter. And that is what the controllers on this planet don't want you to know. They do not want you to know how powerful you are. They don't want you to have an inkling that not only do you create your reality metaphorically, you physically create physical matter with your brain and your mind all the time. And so there's nothing that can't be healed. I've seen people regrow organs and limbs. I saw the x-rays for these ladies. One of them lived up in Orlando near me. And that's how I met him. So we've got this power. And the more that we clean our bodies out and get the garbage out that blocks those superconducting junctures, the better we can create our reality. Okay? So what does this have to do with getting rid of radiation from the sky and from your garden and from your body? It has everything to do with it. And we'll get into that. So just bear with me here. So you've got these Ormus elements in your body. They're in the ground. They're in water. They're in the air. Microbes in the soil eat rocks. They break them down into these elements. And all a monoatomic element is, all an Ormus element is the platinum group metals on the periodic chart, like platinum, rhodium, iridium, osmium, palladium, a few others, gold, mercury, copper, silver. And normally these metals, they're all metals. And all metals, by the way, are crystals. And we're going to talk more about crystals. So all these metals are crystals. By the way, your body is a crystal. By the way, all of existence, all physical reality is a crystal. The whole structure of the cosmos, the whole physical structure of the entire universe is crystalline. Because all a crystal is the arrangement of atoms bound to each other in some kind of a three-dimensional grid formation. That's all a crystal is. So metals, their atoms like to bind together very, very strongly, and they just get arranged in certain patterns, and that pattern determines what that metal is. And so normally these metal atoms, they're very, very strongly charged, and they really, really want to hang on to each other. And that's what makes a metal metal. That's what makes metals look the way they look, and that's what makes them hard. But what's been discovered is that those atoms can exist unconnected to each other. And supposedly that's impossible. You know, from a physics and chemistry standpoint, that's impossible. They have such strong charges, they should always want to hook to each other and turn into a metal. But in fact, they can operate in certain states where they exist as individual discrete atoms, and they look like white ceramic powders. So they're no longer metallic, they're ceramic. And when you ingest them, they plug into those superconducting junctures in the brain and the nervous system, and they jack up the superconductivity, and they strengthen the mind-body connection. When you hear doctors talking about the mind-body connection, well, yes, we've got to explore the mind-body connection. What the hell does that mean? Somewhere, if the mind's really connected to the body, there's got to be like some energy that's plugging into a physical thing. That's where it meets, in those Ormus elements in the body. So if you're eating McDonald's double cheeseburgers like I used to do, I used to love those things. I made a vow actually once to never give up McDonald's double cheeseburgers because I loved them so much. So when you're eating that kind of junk, what happens is, I had the Ronald McDonald relief on the drive-through of my favorite McDonald's next to work. I had it memorized. I still got it burned into my skull. And you know, so you go and eat that kind of food, and guess what it does? It plugs into those junctures and it shuts it down. That's why when you go to an acupuncturist, they go, oh, you've got a blockage in your chi. And what do? They stick a needle in it and they open it back up. But typically, the relief is only temporary because what do? You go back and get another double cheeseburger, and you clog it back up. So if you would stop doing that and eat live food and drink juice and eat all of these things that nature designed us to eat, you would just keep opening it up and strengthening it and strengthening it and strengthening it, and you become like a super freak, super being. You become a superhero, right? Like David Wolf talks about. That's exactly what happens. People, you know, when they hang out with me, they're like, oh my God, how can you remember so much stuff? And how do you know all this stuff? And it's like, because my brain works. Because I read, I don't watch TV, I eat good food, I have energy, and my brain works. I'm not a genius. I've met geniuses, believe me. And I'm no genius. I've met real geniuses. But if you're doing this kind of stuff, you're going to jack up the superconductivity in your body, and you're going to become so much smarter, so much more empathic, so much more connected to yourself, so much more connected to other people, so much more connected to nature, so much more connected to animals and plants and energy. Okay? So what the heck does this have to do with getting rid of radiation out of the sky? Everything. So just bear with me. But I want you to understand the nature of some of these basic things, because if you understand some of these basic things, you can go into your kitchen or into a health food store and know what kind of supplements to eat, or foods to eat, or how to grow it in your garden so that it's got this high level of superconductivity. That's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow night, is how to take a 5-gallon bucket, throw a bunch of stuff in it, let it rot, then drink it, and jack up that superconductivity. Yeah. Photosynthesis and fermentation are two of nature's great ways to create ormus and superconductivity and bioavailable nutrients. So I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking out the window and I'm thinking, gosh, what can I do about these chemtrails? And we developed this, I should say we modernized this technology that Nikola Tesla invented. He called it the personal oscillator. We call it the stress shield. And because I'm a geek engineer, I came across this technology and I saw it and I was blown away by it, because I actually sat with a man who had a device like this, a very crude version of it. And I thought the guy had the most incredible energy I'd ever felt, because I had been working my tail off for like a week, and then I go to this conference, I'm totally exhausted, and at the end of the conference, I wanted to go back to my hotel room at 5 o'clock in the evening and sleep till the next day. And this guy wanted to get together and meet and chat. I was like, that's the last thing I want to do. But this guy came knocking on my hotel door and got me out of bed, and he had the most incredible energy. And after 10 minutes of sitting with him, I felt like $1,000,000. And I said to him, I said, my God, man, you got the best energy I've ever seen. And he said, oh, that's not me. And he pulls out this big brick, and he's got this thing in his pocket. And I was like, what the heck is that? So long story short, he needed an engineer to redesign and re-engineer it. We got together and we did. And so now we've got this device called the stress shield, and guess what it puts out? High frequency scalar energy. And because the frequencies of this, I can pass it around, you guys can play with it. Because it puts out this high frequency scalar energy, what we found is, first of all, what it does is it slows the brainwave states down, it de-stresses the body, it de-stresses the brain at a brainwave state level, but it also de-stresses all of the cells in the body, because guess what? What do you got in your body? Superconducting ormus elements. So it interacts, that field interacts with them and slows things down. It de-stresses cells at the cellular level, slows the brain down. The Earth puts out a pulse called the Schumann resonance. It's supposed to slow your brain and your body down, especially so that when you go to bed at night, you get into deep sleep states. It's called the Schumann resonance. And the Schumann resonance is supposed to be, the way it occurs is, cosmic radiation, solar radiation, lightning, and certain energies in the atmosphere, they all come down, they hit the surface of the Earth, they bounce back up, they hit the ionosphere, and they just keep bouncing back and forth between the ionosphere and the surface of the Earth. Okay? And that happens about 7.68 times per second, or 7.68 cycles, or hertz. And unfortunately, because of man-made electromagnetic radiation, the electric grid, all these electrical devices that we create on this planet, and all the fields from that, it's interfering with that pulsing. So that pulsing is about double the speed of what it should be. So instead of listening to this nice, slow, calm lullaby, the heartbeat of our mother putting us to sleep at night, Lawrence Welk chilling you out, we're listening to boom, 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 disco. Constantly, 24/7, boom, 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 boom. Your brain's picking up, your brain resonates with beats. It's like if you listen to music, think about it, you listen to music, right? You listen to some fast salsa, and it's like you get into the beat. If you're listening to something that's slow and chill, you're going to chill out, right? Same thing, your brain picks this up, it speeds up. So it's about double what it should be, and everybody is stressed, and nobody is getting into deep sleep states. So we developed this technology to deal with all that, and it works beautifully. And so I'm sitting in my office looking at these chemtrails and thinking, I'll bet you there's a way to use scalar energy to knock that stuff out of the sky. Because we had been testing people, we do different kinds of tests on people when they come to see what's going on with their health, to get a picture of their health status. And we start seeing strontium and aluminum and barium showing up in their bodies. Well, it just so happens that those are the three metals that are the components of chemtrails. And for those of you that may think that chemtrails are some kind of conspiracy theory, well, they're not. Because you can go online now and you can see video of geoengineers talking about engineering the atmosphere in case we need to for global warming. And guess what they're dumping into the atmosphere? 10 to 20 million metric tons per year of barium, aluminum, and strontium powders. What? Barium, aluminum, and strontium. And aluminum, by the way, is a fire accelerant. So guess what happens when you dump it over California and there's a drought going on and stuff catches on fire? You get the worst fires you've had in a long, long time, which is exactly what's been happening the last few years. Okay? If you want to see proof of this, just go to my blog, beyondrawfood.com, and I have a video there. It's 90 minutes long about this with geoengineers at a conference talking about this stuff. It's no longer conspiracy theory. They're publicly admitting it. You can go to YouTube, and there's a TED Talk. If you've ever heard of TED, Technology, Entertainment, Design, there's a TED Talk by a Stanford scientist saying, yeah, well, we're spraying all this stuff in the sky, and it's cheap and it works great. We don't want to do it, but if we have to do it, we need to know how to do it. Okay? So this stuff's going on, and I'm thinking, okay, I know from my days in working with free energy, I learned about a lot of suppressed information from these people I was working with. And I know from that our government and a few other governments are using this scalar energy technology with these very, very large antennas. Some of you might have heard of it, HARP. They have 52 different HARP antennas around the world now. Some are based on ships. And they're just big microwave and scalar energy antennas. And they can direct this stuff into the sky and bounce it off the atmosphere and do all kinds of horrendous stuff with it. And I knew that they were using it to manipulate weather. And this has been documented. The Soviets and Japanese, we've been doing it. Other people have been doing it. And now they're no longer hiding that, too. It's getting crazy. And so I figured, well, if they can engineer the weather with scalar technology, why can't we? Why can't we clean it up? And so I got onto the great Oracle Jah YouTube and did some of this and a little bit of this. And in fact, I found there were a whole bunch of people who had scalar technologies that were knocking chemtrails out of the sky. I was like, great, so now I know it'll work. So all we've got to do is take the stress shield technology and jack it up, make it bigger and stronger, and we can knock this stuff out of the sky. So that's what we did. And it works beautifully. If you understand some other basic things, for example, that nature has a way of dealing with toxins, even radioactive ones. There's actually a bacteria that eats nuclear waste. There's actually a bacteria that likes eating radioactive waste. How cool is that? It was just discovered recently, and it's been in all these scientific journals. Always a solution, always a solution. So we have bacteria that eat radioactive waste for lunch. There's probably more than one strain.
They're radioactive then?
The bacteria? No, this is the cool thing. Bacteria are nature's nanotech. Bacteria eat things and break them down into smaller things. So they break these radioactive nuclides down into non-toxic elements. How cool is that? How cool is that?
Way cool.
Way cool. So you dump some bacteria into the water, you dump it on your land, and it eats up this stuff, right? Now, as it turns out, if you don't have massive nuclear radiation, you can use other microbes to do this on your own property. So, for years now, I've been telling people and teaching people to grow their own food because I saw what was coming. And I kept telling people, you know, at least learn how to sprout. Learn how to grow some of your food. Because we're going to get to a point where your food's going to be irradiated and it's going to be toxic unless you're in control of it. And that's precisely what's going on. The west coast of the United States, where most of our produce comes from, has got the heaviest amount of fallout. Now, if the farmers over there knew what to do, it wouldn't be a problem. Here's what you do. So we got it. How to knock it out of the sky. These scalar technologies, right? I'll get into how to actually make these in a moment. We'll talk about these things. So you knock it out of the sky. It comes down onto your land. Eventually, once you get it out of the sky, it won't come around because these scalar fields will keep it out of your area. That's why you don't have to worry about radiation getting into Klamath Lake algae. Because guess what mountains happen to be? Certain mountains. They're scalar energy generators and antennas. They're generators and receivers. And what they do is they have certain minerals in them that are high in basalt, and basalt is high in monoatomic elements. It's high in these superconducting monoatomic ormus elements, the same ones that are in your body, the same ones that are in healthy soil and water, the same ones that are in the ocean, and they're even in the air. So these mountains, they create these big scalar vortexes. They're spiral vortexes. They create these spirals. And by the way, this is why you don't find swamis and gurus and shamans living on the beaches of Florida. Where do you usually find them? You find them in mountains, especially yogis, especially the most powerful yogis. They're way up in the Himalayas, 13,000 feet in the top of a Himalayan mountain. Why? Because number one, what are those mountains made of? High basalt rock, high ormus rock, superconducting rock. They are sitting up on the top of giant scalar wave antennas. They're like a connection to God. They're like a cosmic connection to God. Because this scalar energy, it is the energy of consciousness. The brain waves that we all put out, they're scalar energy. So these yogis, what do? They dig caves into these scalar wave antennas. And what do? They eat the food on the mountains. They drink the water from the mountains. And what kind of water do they drink on these mountains? Spring water. Now, if you've listened to David Wolf or Daniel Vitalis or me talk about this stuff, you'll know that spring water, how does it get to the surface? Especially at the top of a 13,000 foot high mountain. Where is the pump that pushes it up to a 13,000 foot high mountain? There ain't no pump. What it is, it's levitation. It's the ormus minerals in this water. They're anti-gravitational. When they hit these aquifers, when they accumulate enough, they levitate the water back up to the surface. So at the top of a 13,000 foot high mountain, do you think that there's going to be a lot of ormus in that water to lift water up 13,000 feet? Yeah. Oh yeah. And what do these yogis do? They drink it. They're drinking superconducting high ormus water all day long. And what are they eating? They're eating plants that are grown up there in high ormus soil. Plants break these things down and they deliver them in a bioavailable format. The same thing with spring water. Spring water is at the end of the hydrological cycle of the earth. It's in a highly energized bioavailable format. These guys eat and drink this stuff. They sit inside of a scalar wave generator, and what do? They meditate 12 to 14 hours a day. Do you think that that's going to expand your consciousness a little bit? Do you think that's going to expand your ability to create your reality a little bit? Do you think that these guys could maybe use their consciousness to help heal this planet? I met a yogi over in India who was up there in the Himalayas. And what interested me was somebody told me, they invited me to a yoga retreat that was hosted by some of his teachers. And you have to understand, my experience with yoga was basically going to a class that was essentially like exercise, and then I'd fall asleep in the back of the room at the end of the class. And so when this lady said, "Oh, we think you'd really like to come to this yoga retreat," in the back of my own mind, I'm thinking, no, right? Yoga not for me. Me, gearhead engineer type. Me like building machines and doing left brain things, right? Until she said, "Well, this yogi has a 5 foot tall chunk of monoatomic mercury in his ashram, and he uses it to heal people." And I'm like, what? 5 foot tall? First of all, if you got a 5 foot tall chunk of monoatomic anything in your ashram, ain't nobody going to be able to get anywhere near it. Because when you have a superconductor, they generate huge amounts of energy. And if you've got a 5 foot tall, 2.5, 3 foot orb of monoatomic anything, it's going to generate tens of thousands of volts. And if you get within 50 feet of it, it's going to shoot out a bolt of lightning that'll vaporize you. Tesla coil. Ark of the Covenant. If you read the stories of the Ark of the Covenant, if you want to really see a really cool book, Secrets of the Sacred Ark. Really cool book about the Ark of the Covenant. What the Ark of the Covenant was a big vessel for carrying around large quantities of monoatomic gold. And all of the various people that ran around with that stuff, they were reported to be able to knock down 12-foot thick stone walls and decimate entire armies with it. Because they're walking around with a superconductor, and they had special priests wearing special golden robes that were trained in how to carry this thing so that they wouldn't get electrocuted by it. They were grounded. Like David Wolf's earthing technologies. They were using earthing technologies to walk around with Ormus gold.
Are you open to questions?
Not yet.
Okay.
But hang on to it. We'll start in about 7 minutes or so. So anyway, so a lot of these stories, when you start to learn about Ormus and superconductivity and scalar energy, then these stories of what is it, Crouchy Tiger, Hidden Dragon? I call it Grouchy Tiger and Sleeping Dragon. My wife is Chinese. I goof on her a lot. But anyway, when you hear these stories, my wife is from Taiwan, and she says, oh yeah, we have these stories, and you know, it's true that these old shamans in China, they could fly through the air. Well, that sounds like nonsense until you know about Ormus and superconductivity. You start loading your body up with these superconducting anti-gravitational minerals, and you're meditating and doing all these crazy things that these guys did. Who knows what you could do? So anyway, so these mountains are these big scalar wave generators. They're transmitting and they're receiving energy. They're like a galactic connection to God. They ground the earth to the sky. They ground the earth to the cosmos. And you can see evidence of the scalar fields that they put off if you ever see pictures of like Mount Shasta or Mount Pinatubo or Mount Fuji or any of these sacred mountains that are known to be held sacred by native people. If you look at them at certain times when clouds go over them, you'll see these clouds that look like flying saucers over them, right? I had a friend that went to Mount Shasta and she took a picture of these, they call them lenticular clouds. She said, ooh, ETs at Mount Shasta. And I said, well, there may be ETs at Mount Shasta, but those ain't flying saucers. Those are created by the scalar field coming off the mountain, because those mountains generate this big spiral vortex of energy. And when water vapor goes up over it, it swirls it up into little disks. And you got flying saucers over your mountain. So you got all this stuff going on. You got scalar energy, the energy of consciousness, slows down, coagulates, turns into matter. You've got Ormus elements that create superconductivity, that create anti-gravity, and a lot of other weird properties. And you can use this stuff to knock chemtrails and heavy metals out of the sky. And so the cool thing is a mountain made out of a super high technology electronic circuit with oscillators and timer chips and all that? No. What's a mountain made of? Dirt and rocks, right? So why can't you take a bunch of the right kinds of dirt and rocks and pile them up in a pile and make your own little scalar wave generator? Well, you can. You can. That's what these are, and we're going to talk about it and show you how. So a scalar field will knock these chemtrails out of the sky. It'll drop this radiation out of the sky. And then when it is out of the sky, it will create this scalar vortex that will keep those energies away. And that's one reason why you don't have to worry about Klamath Lake algae being contaminated by the Fukushima radiation, because when it gets those scalar fields of those mountains, then they're just going to push it away and drop it to the ground. And it ain't going to get into the lake. And you're not going to have to worry about it. Water break. Spring water has Ormus in it.
What about coconut water?
Oh yeah, coconut water. It takes like, I forget how long, it's a crazy amount of time for the water to get up to the top of a coconut tree and get into that coconut. So you have like super pure high Ormus water in a coconut. Okay, so you can build little mini mountains, knock this stuff out of the sky. Then it lands on your property. What are you going to do? Well, you can neutralize it with microbes, because microbes are nature's nanotechnology and they love eating stuff and breaking it down. So do mushrooms and fungus. So do parasites and molds and fungi and bacteria and viruses. All of those are nature's garbage collectors. They like eating stuff and breaking it down. They love breaking down toxins into non-toxic stuff. That's what their role in nature is. So if you understand that, you can plant mushrooms in your yard. And those mushrooms will grow roots throughout your soil. And they do all kinds of cool stuff. They actually act like an internet in the ground and allow plants to talk to each other. They actually allow communication between plants and root systems in the ground. They do a lot of interesting things, but one of the things they do also is they secrete they secrete chemicals that attract bacteria, and they also secrete acids that break minerals down into, guess what, ormus elements. So it increases the ormus in your soil. And when you've got that increased ormus in the soil, that treats the water in the soil homeopathically. So when rain comes down, it's going to treat the water homeopathically and do all kinds of wonderful things to it. And those microbes are going to eat the toxins that drop down out of the sky. So what do? Very, very simple. There's a Japanese professor named Teruo Higa. That's T-E-R-U-O. His last name is H-I-G-A. Brilliant guy. He was an old-timey chemical ag professor back in the 60s in Japan. And he started playing around with microbes to try and figure out how to grow crops better. And he tried this microbe and that microbe and this microbe and that microbe and this microbe and that microbe and that other microbe over there and that one over there. And none of them worked. And after 30 years of doing that and struggling and struggling and struggling, he finally got disgusted and said, screw it, and he took his pile of microbes and threw them all in the compost pile. And when he threw them all away, his compost pile went ballistic. It broke down super fast and all this life came growing up out of it. And that's when he realized that it's this mixture of microbes, this symbiotic mixture, that makes soil work. It makes nutrients get broken down, it creates ormus, it breaks down toxins, it treats water homeopathically, it does all this cool stuff. And so, he decided to sell it. So he did. He formulated it, put it on the market, and he sells it. And you can buy it. It's called Effective Microorganisms, or EM. I sell it on my website. It goes by different brand names. It's like $22 for a liter of the stuff. It's dirt cheap. You can take like a few tablespoons in a 5-gallon bucket of water, spray it on your land, and those microbes will go into the soil and they will eat those toxins and break them down. Okay? So you can spray mushrooms. You can put down something called mycorrhiza. M-Y-C-O-R-R-H-I-Z-A, mycorrhiza. All they are fungus spores that will grow these roots. These fungus roots are called mycelia, by the way. So you put fungus roots, you put mycorrhiza into the soil. You spray your soil with these effective microorganisms, and they will break toxins down and make them non-toxic. So you can neutralize this stuff on your property. You can spray it on plants. Here's the cool thing. You spray it on plants, it's a plant food. And it's a pesticide. It's completely non-toxic. You can drink it. You can drink it. It's a probiotic. You can put it in your compost pile. It'll accelerate the breakdown of compost. And there's a bazillion different uses for this stuff. It's really cool stuff. That's why I sell it. You can use it on farms to neutralize waste, like livestock waste, like hog lagoons, stables, that kind of stuff. You can totally get rid of the smell in it. So you can also use it as a cleaner around the house. You can use it to neutralize odors, all kinds of crazy stuff. If you got pets and they poop on the carpet or whatever, you can neutralize the smell and the waste on it, right? So, once this stuff gets knocked down to the ground, you can neutralize it on the plants, you can neutralize it in your garden, you can neutralize it in the soil. No problem. Then how do you get it out of your body? Because we're all breathing this stuff in. Okay? And you guys heard David Wolf talk about what you can do about nuclear radiation? Okay? Yes? No? Anybody brushed their teeth this morning? Okay. Well, David gives a really nice list of things you can do within your body to pull this stuff out. And I'll go over some of that and some other things. But the number one thing that I see in working with people and testing the body and myself, one of the number one things that I use is zeolites. Zeolites, you may have heard of them, they're just minerals that have a very strong negative charge and a very interesting structure, and they'll grab onto these nuclear particles and they'll hook them and neutralize them and pull them out of the body. So zeolites. Zeolite supplements. You can buy them online. We sell them. ZEOLITE. Yeah, if you go to my website, freshandalive.com, we have two different kinds. We have Amica brand and we have Umbaya Gold. The Umbaya Gold are monoatomic. They're very, very interesting. So zeolites are like one of the #1 things for pulling this stuff out of your body. Now the other thing used to be seaweed. All right, seaweed is a really good one. But what are you going to do when you've got like over 50 million becquerels of radiation in the ocean with 1 billion becquerels of radiation dumping in every day? You know, they're predicting that eventually all of that radiation will fill the entire ocean. It'll circulate around to the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and of course that doesn't include the Gulf oil spill and all this other junk we have going on. Well, the cool thing is, by the way, these microbes can break down the stuff in the ocean too. And there are companies that have that technology and they're doing it. Always a solution. If you understand the universe is a big matter energy system, there's always a solution. So within your body, zeolites are really good. I don't recommend eating sea vegetables now because of this massive amount of pollution. Brian Clement at Hippocrates says that it doesn't affect the seaweed, the sea vegetables. I don't believe that. And I'm not about to gamble with it. Till I see volumes and volumes and volumes of evidence that that's the case. I don't trust that. So anyway, I don't recommend eating sea vegetables. Instead, blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. I highly recommend that. And guess what? We got 2 ladies here to sell the stuff, and I'm not just pushing this stuff because they're here. I eat this stuff every day. I make smoothies with it. I guzzle it. You know, you buy a bottle of like E3 Live, and they recommend to take like 2 tablespoons, and it'll last you a month. I go through a bottle a week. And that's just that. I also eat the Simplexity stuff. I get this whole batch of different algae products, and I'm like, pah, every day. And it's pulling this stuff out. What else? Well, mushrooms are actually very good for pulling this stuff out. But mushrooms and fungus are one of the first things to uptake this stuff. So if you're going to be eating mushroom supplements to pull this stuff out, like shiitake or maitake or cordyceps or all these various types of mushrooms, you got to get them grown indoors. If you go to fungi.com, Fungi Perfecti is the name of the company. They have a whole line of mushroom products. They're fantastic for pulling this stuff out. And then there's herbs. Cilantro, parsley, ashwagandha. Superb for pulling these metals out of the body. And chlorophyll in general. Chlorophyll, which we don't have time to get into, is this magic, multidimensional, spiral structured, high ormus analog to our own blood. It's plant blood. It's very similar to our own blood, and it's great for pulling this stuff out of the body. Wheatgrass juice, chlorella, spirulina, Klamath Lake algae. Anything that's really good and green is going to pull this stuff out. Okay? Those are some of the main ones. There are actually lots of different things. For example, we have on our website, we have a radiation formula. It's a blend of different mushrooms and herbs that are really good for pulling radiation out. I put together a whole package of detox stuff specifically for radiation. So God's Herbs Radiation Formula, that's a good one. There's also a company called Herbs of Light, and they have something called like the Maishitake blend or something like that. It's this whole slew of mushrooms and stuff. It's good for pulling radiation out. Okay? So we got the solutions. We can pull this stuff out. It's very effective for getting this stuff out of the body, and we're very fortunate we're not in Japan and we're not exposed to high levels of this stuff. God help the people in Japan because they are being lied to up and down the street. They should be evacuating major cities there. If I was in Tokyo or if I was in Japan, I would get the hell out. Or I would do this stuff and neutralize it, which even then would be a challenge.
What about Mount Fuji?
What about Mount Fuji? That's a good question. Mount Fuji's putting out a big scalar field. So you can bet Mount Fuji is helping to neutralize it. So we've got these solutions. I'll bet you $1 million in Hawaii, in the United States, on these mountains, you've got the same kind of stuff going on. It's just nobody's marketed it yet. I met a Hawaiian kahuna, really cool guy. He was a very young guy, actually. And he was going to volcanoes in Hawaii and getting high temperature bacteria cultures from the vents of volcanoes and making supplements with them. How brilliant is that? Because do you know how the Earth remineralizes itself? And do you know how the Earth gets ormus back onto the planet? Volcanoes. Volcanoes. If you remember, I said these ormus elements, they're superconducting and they create huge fields of energy, and they like to ground out and they shoot lightning bolts out, right? So you can check this out online. Go to YouTube and search on Iceland volcano lightning. Iceland volcano lightning. And what you'll see is that pesky volcano in Iceland that's messing everybody's air traffic up is shooting out huge amounts of ash into the air and covering Europe and all over the place. It's remineralizing the Earth. It's also re-ormicizing the Earth. And they've got this video showing lightning bolts shooting up out of the volcano. And of course, scientists are baffled. How is this possible? Well, if you understand ormus and superconductivity, if you understand that volcanoes shoot out huge amounts of ormus, and it wants to ground out, and it does that by shooting out lightning bolts. And that's what's going on. So if you're going to be eating a food and you want to make it something that's detoxifying and regenerative, if it's grown in volcanic soil, do you think it might have some ormus in it? If you're buying chia seed for $55 a pound that's grown in 5 or 6 different regions close to volcanoes, do you think it's going to have some ormus in it? Do you think it's going to pull radiation out of the body and neutralize waste? If you're eating algae that's grown in a lake next to an extinct volcano that's feeding off of volcanic ash, do you think it's going to have some ormus in it? Do you think it's going to neutralize radiation in the body? Yeah. It's cool. We got nature's nanotechnology. And we can just eat it. We can throw it into a smoothie. Do all these cool things. Matter of fact, I just put a video out on YouTube. One of my recipes, one of my smoothie recipes.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, actually, Marcia does better marketing than me. I'm so busy, I have no time to post anything. And so thank God she's going around posting this stuff on Facebook. But yeah, I did my green smoothie recipe because I'm not a big fan of mixing greens with smoothies because you get fermentation and you get problems with that. So I have a green smoothie that has algae and stuff in it. It's a super dense green, and you don't get the food combination problems. So I got that on YouTube. So anyway, very quickly let me tell you what to do, and then we'll answer some questions. So specifically, all right, you got these supplements and things that you can do to pull this stuff out of your body. How do you knock it out of the sky? We're talking about how to neutralize it in your yard and on your plants. You can use these bacteria. You mix them in water, you spray them, it breaks it down, neutralize it. And by the way, you can also, on your yard and in your garden, you can take rock powders that you can buy, like azomite, glauconite, also known as Jersey green sand. There's a whole litany of rock powders you can get. If you want to know which ones, get the book, The Enlivened Rock Powders by Harvey Lyle, and you can find out. But you can take these rock powders and spread them out on your yard and your garden. And then you, what's that? The Enlivened Rock Powders by Harvey Lyle. And you can take these rock powders and spread them out on your yard and your gardens and stuff. And then you spray the microbes down. And what kind of rock powders are they going to be? What kind of rock are they going to have in them? Volcanic rock, that's right. All these rock powders are volcanic. And you spray the microbes on them, the microbes eat it, break it down into ormus and bioavailable nutrients that the plants can uptake, and then they're going to uptake it. And if you're eating them, you're going to get more nutrients and you're going to get more ormus. So there's a little tip for your yard and your garden. And then, how do you knock it out of the sky? Okay, it is so simple. You can go online and you can study this more intensely, but you can go online and Google orgonite. O-R-G-O-N-I-T-E, orgonite. There's a man named Wilhelm Reich back in the 1950s. He was put in jail for changing the weather with this stuff. And he came up with the term orgone. And he said it was this life force energy that permeated everything, and you could take bad orgone energy and convert it into good orgone energy and fix things and heal things and all of that. And he tried interesting the government and the military in this stuff, and they weren't terribly interested because he was going to them and telling them that he was knocking UFOs out of the sky with this. And they didn't believe him. Until finally he went to Tucson, and they had had like 50 years of drought, and he made it rain for a year in Tucson. And then they took notice. So Wilhelm Reich was the one, he coined the term orgone. So a lot of people call this stuff orgone. It's just scalar energy. Orgone, Reich energy, tachyon energy, 0-point energy. It's all the same thing. It's a high frequency energy of consciousness. And so anyway, Reich started this whole ball going. And then another man, if I can remember his name, it's Carl Wells, W-E-L-Z. Carl Wells developed a little mini mountain, and he called it Orgonite. So you can Google it. You may have seen these things around. I got one of these things at Raw Spirit Festival a few years ago, and it looks like basically some kind of resin with a few crystals in it and a whole bunch of metal shavings. And there was a guy selling one of these for like 30 bucks at Raw Spirit, and I'm looking at it, and I didn't know about this stuff back then. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, it's an EMF protector. And I said, well, I already got EMF protection. He said, well, it also improves mood and enhances things, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, that's nice. I'm turning around, and he said, yeah, and also it'll calm your spouse down and make them more, I was like, give me 30. So anyway, I bought one. I took it home. I put it in my wife's office, and I don't know if it was this, but we were having a lot of marriage problems, and eventually it went away. So I don't think it was this, though. But at any rate, I really didn't notice a whole lot with this thing, and I can feel energy in certain things, so I didn't feel much coming off of it. And so I just stuck it on her desk, and it was a paperweight for many years. So you can buy this stuff online. If you Google this, you'll see tons and tons of this stuff for various prices, right? And all it is, it's literally just a bunch of metal shavings in like a fiberglass or some kind of resin with a few crystals or rocks. This particular one has kyanite in it, and it's got quartz. And what that does is this. The crystals, they have ormus in them. Crystals have ormus in them. Actually, all rocks have ormus in them, some more than others. But quartz crystals especially have ormus in them, and quartz crystals specifically have ormus gold in them. And if you want to see proof of this, you can go to my blog on BeyondRawFood.com. I have an interview there with a scientist out in New Mexico. He's a very highly credentialed materials engineer, multiple PhDs from Notre Dame and several other universities. And he's one of the world's ormus experts. And he took bottles, bottle glass, like pickle jars, Coke bottles, he ground them up into a powder, put them in a magnetic bottle, zapped them with a $40 microwave from Target, and gold and platinum precipitated out of the glass. Now normally when you stick a glass in a microwave, it doesn't melt, does it? But in a magnetic bottle, it will. Because the magnetic field will pull the ormus out, and it turns back into the metals. So he proved that ormus gold is in silica, which is quartz. That's also why, by the way, whenever you find quartz in the ground, natural deposits of quartz, you will always find gold. Because Milewski proved, when he pulled this gold out of the glass, and these little beads of gold and platinum were sitting in this glass, it was like a crystal. It kept growing and growing and growing. And the gold and the platinum became bigger and bigger over the years. After he zapped it one time for 20 minutes, and it kept growing more and more gold. And that's why when you see these deposits of quartz, you always see gold along with them. That's why like rutilated quartz is actually quartz with gold in it. It's where the ormus gold is starting to precipitate out. So crystals are high in superconducting ormus elements, and that's why people do all this woo-woo new age stuff with it, because it's creating scalar energy. So you can take some crystals, stick them in a resin like fiberglass or acrylic or casting resins of various kinds you can buy, and you mix these crystals in with conductors. So you can go to machine shops and they will give you metal shavings for free. So you can get free metal shavings, you can get crystals for like $3 off of eBay or wherever. and you throw them together in, what does this look like when it's upside down?
Martini glass.
Bingo!
Sorry.
We know who the lush is. Martini glass, yeah. So you can go online, get a martini glass, go to Walmart, get yourself some fiberglass resin, or if you want to get something non-toxic, you can get something non-toxic. Get your machine shop shavings, dump them into this, throw a few crystals in there, and let it solidify up, and you got yourself a little mini mountain scalar wave generator. Now here's the thing. 95% of these that you see on the market, they're not really worth anything, because the key to making this stuff work well is having the particle sizes small. So whatever particles, metal particles you can get them as small as possible. We'll get, for example, machine shop filings, or go to like locksmiths and get their filings and sift them through a screen and get the smallest particles. So the smaller the metal particles, the better. So you just intermix them with the crystals and you got yourself a little mini scalar wave generator. So something like this might clear, an office space if you make it right. But you can tell if you're looking around on the internet or wherever, if you're going to buy some of this stuff, if you see big chunks of metal in there, big shavings, don't waste your time. Because we've tested these. As a matter of fact, if you go to my Facebook page, the easy way to get there is just kenrohla.com. KENROHLA.com. They'll send you right to my Facebook page. I have pictures of some little tests that we did with these things. And because these things are generating scalar vortexes, you can see evidence of them. If you put one of these under or over a container of water, like a flat, maybe 6 to 8 inch container of water, maybe 2-3 inches deep, I use a little Tupperware dish, and put this up over it, and you freeze the water, two things will happen if you've got good orgonite. One thing that will happen is you will see a torus-shaped donut of little fine bubbles appear in the ice. And so you can see this on my Facebook page. I've got some that I made. This is a little device that was made in a muffin pan. They call these holy hand grenades, by the way. Because you can take them and throw them underneath a cell phone tower, and if you make a good one, it'll neutralize the EMF from the cell phone tower. It'll also knock, like I said, it'll knock chemtrails out of the sky. It'll also knock pollution out of the sky. There's a guy named Don Croft and other people that are doing this. They went to Los Angeles and they put thousands of these around Orange County in Los Angeles. And if you go there now, you won't see anywhere nearly as much air pollution as you did 15, 20 years ago. 15, 20 years ago in the 70s and 80s, the sky in LA was unbelievable. It was orange. It was just full of brown goo. And now it's pretty clear. You can actually see blue sky most of the time. It's because these guys have been gifting orgonite all over the place. And there are thousands of people all over the world gifting orgonite all over the world. So the New World Order Illuminati don't have a chance. Because they got their scalar technology and we got ours.
So what space this little thing will cover?
That's a good question. What kind of space will this cover? Well, if you make it crappy, it won't cover anything. So like these little things they've got... Oh well. Well, I'll tell you about that. These little cheesy ones, they don't do too much. But just be aware. You can make much better ones than what you can buy online. The ones I make... Now you have to understand, years ago I was a potter. Alright? Electrical engineer, computer scientist, potter. When I told my CEO, I was working in the medical industry. And when I told my CEO I wanted to quit and become a potter, he said, "What's that?" It's like, how far out of his reality was that? Nobody could conceive of this high-paid IT manager chucking it all and making pottery for a living, but that's what I did. And I learned a lot about high-temperature physics and materials in that job because I'm a geek. I wasn't just happy with making pottery. I had to figure out all the quantum physics of it. So I learned a few things. And so I made these things. And something this big can structure a cell phone tower. It's the size of a muffin. That was made in a muffin pan from Kmart. Okay, what does that mean, structure? What that means is this. These scalar fields, they create these vortexes, and what they do, those scalar vortexes, they They structure conventional electromagnetic radiation like microwaves, radio waves, TV, infrared, ultraviolet, all of the spectrum of energy that we know about and measure normally. It structures it so that it becomes much less damaging to human beings. That's a whole nother talk, but basically all that electromagnetic radiation, it's random and it's chaotic, and it interferes with brainwave states, it interferes with cellular communication, because guess what? All the cells in your body are talking to each other with electrical impulses and sound and radio waves and scalar waves. So these scalar vortexes will structure conventional damaging electromagnetic radiation. Cell phone towers put out microwave radiation. They'll structure it and make all those random chaotic waves that pass through you and make a lot of noise and interfere with your cellular communication. They structure it so that all those waves become parallel, so when they pass through your body they're much quieter. And then they don't interfere with cellular communication as much, and you muscle test stronger. Holy hand grenades. Just go online and Google holy hand grenade. Google HHG and you'll see these. So that's it. Metal particles, crystals. What kind of crystals? What kind of metal particles? Yes. All of them. Whatever. Play with it. Whatever you can get. Play with it. Quartz is a good one. Kyanite is a good one. Amethyst is a good one. There are books all about crystals. Edgar Casey's got wonderful books about crystals. Study it. Different crystals correspond to different frequencies. Different crystals have different healing energies. If you remember, I said crystals have ormus in them. Crystals create scalar energy. That's a whole concept behind woo-woo new age crystal healing. You've got a scalar wave generator running through an electrical nervous system that's a scalar energy transmission system, and you put an ormus antenna, you put a scalar antenna in your hand that's full of superconducting ormus, and what do? You get scalar energy that's healing, transmitting through a focal point of a crystal and directing into a localized area in the human body, and it can heal stuff. So that's some of the ideas behind this stuff. Okay, so
The HHG, for example, in the house.
what do you do with this in the house? You can put it next to your computer, you can put it under your pillow. For example, I almost never get headaches, but for some reason I got a headache one day. I was probably dehydrated, and it was really bad. And so I just laid down. And I know what to do to get rid of a headache, but I was too lazy, so I just laid down and I slid this up under my pillow. And in like 5 minutes, headache gone. So you can sleep with it, you can put it on your nightstand, you can put it next to your computer, you can put it on your refrigerator, wherever. You can make bunches of these. You can stick them all over the place. Or you can make a big one. Last week I was in Naples. And this is just a big martini glass. I was in Naples last weekend, and I was staying with a family. And I had this big mama here, which I'll tell you about. And it's got an active scalar field. It actually has the powered stress shield technology in it that puts out the Schumann resonance, and it has other stuff in it, which we'll talk about. So anyway, I made this one, and I put a Tesla coil in it, and crystals and stuff in it. And I wired it up to a stress shield. This is the first one first powered one that I made, and I slept with it. And it knocked me out. Now I already sleep well, because I sleep with a stress shield. I've been doing that for years. I'll tell you what, I slept with this thing, and both my wife and I slept 11 hours. And normally I sleep about 7 hours. If I'm really cleaned out, I'll sleep 5 or 6. So I slept 11 hours, and it was so deep. And the cool thing was, I had wonderful dreams. I dreamt I was a Cosby kid. It was the most surreal thing. I was one of the Cosby kids, and I'm like Mr. White Guy, right? And there's Claire and Cliff and the Cosby kids, and they're trying to talk me into doing my homework because I was refusing to do my homework, which is a real hoot for me, because in my family, if I didn't do my homework, I grew up in the South. You just got a good old-fashioned country ass whooping. They didn't talk to you about it. It's like, do your homework. So I'm just having this hilarious, vivid colored dream that I'm a Cosby kid. And then another night, I had this dream that I was at this really, really cool water park on the side of this mountain, and the water park and everything was cool enough, but I could fly. So I'd go down the water slides and everything, and then I didn't have to walk back up. I'd just fly back up, and I'd cut in line and just get back on the slide. And it was all in vivid color. So night after night after night, my wife and I both were having all these crazy, vivid, wonderful dreams, and getting into deep sleep. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh man, I could sleep a couple more hours, but I had to go to work. So anyway, that's what we found with that one. It gets you in a really deep sleep state. So I took that to Naples, and I didn't have it powered. And the people that were hosting me, they slept with it, and it knocked them out. They slept 11 hours, and it wasn't even powered. And that's the cool thing. It doesn't have to be powered. If you put those metals and the non-conductor and the crystals in there, you'll generate a scalar field. And the more of it that you put in there, and the finer the particles, the stronger it'll be. So we did that, and then I got to thinking, okay, I'm going to make the mother of all organites. And I wanted to make a really big one to knock the chemtrails out of the sky. But I figured I'd kind of do this intermediary thing and see what would happen. So I took a really big crystal and I put a Tesla coil around it, and then I put tons of amethyst around it, and then I put tons of quartz crystals around that, and then I put copper particles around that, and then I put gold into it, real gold. I took my wife's jewelry and ground it up, and God bless her soul, she was cool with it, because she got in trouble. I did. And you know what's funny though? It's usually, my wife is Chinese, and so her language is not, her first language is not English. So I can never, I'll tell all these great jokes and stuff, and she never laughs at it, because she's just like, man, you're not funny. So whenever I make something new, I come up with this new thing, I'm like, oh, this is the coolest thing. She's like, so what? But this one impressed her. This one, she comes in, she's like, oh my God. And we slept with it, and it really knocked us out, and we really had cool dreams. So I took that to Naples, and here was a really good test. Because it's one thing, we could be doing this, and it might be doing nothing, and it could be all placebo effect, right? We're all just conjuring it up with our minds. So I took this big one, and it's powered, by the way. It has the stress shield technology in it. And we were staying with his family, and their 16-year-old son went to bed. So about an hour after he went to bed, we stuck it in his room. And his mom was in there, and she slept in there too. And she had major sleep problems. Well, 11 hours later, he gets up. And he's like, whoa. And the only reason he got up was because he had an appointment and he had to go. And he's like, oh man, I slept so well, so deep. He didn't even know it was there. He didn't know it was in his room. And so when we told him what's going on, he's like, oh, that's why. Because it knocked him out. And he was having all kinds of bizarre dreams. And his mother, who usually got up 3 or 4 times a night, slept through the whole night. She said she'd never done that in decades. So that's one of the things it does. It entrains the brain just like music entrains the brain. And if you use the right frequencies and the right crystals and things, you can create beneficial frequencies that will de-stress the body and heal it, slow things down. And if you make it strong enough, it'll knock particles out of the sky. Pollution, heavy metals, that kind of stuff. Okay? So we're working on this technology. We're going to make it stronger, lighter, faster, more bionic. And so it should get smaller. But that's all you got to do, Get a simple mold. You can do it in anything. You can do it in a bread pan. It doesn't have to be cone shaped. And you can make it yourself.
Do you sell them?
We will be selling them. We're right now figuring out how to size them and how to make them for the least money possible. Because there's some expensive stuff in these.
So basically metal shavings?
Metal shavings, crystals, and fiberglass or acrylic or some kind of resin. That's it. It helps if you layer it. Like if you layer conductors and non-conductors, that helps.
Also, like if you layer, you put a coat of resin and then you put the metal and then maybe another coat of resin and the crystal.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then what are the wires? On the one that has the wires, what are the wires do?
Well, on this one, well, actually on both of these, we have Tesla coils inside of them. And
Tesla coil?
yeah, Tesla coil. A Tesla coil, there are various, Nikola Tesla, you know, was a brilliant scientist back in the early 1900s. He developed all kinds of technologies that could save the planet. And of course, he was suppressed and squashed, and his ideas were stolen, and everything was taken from him, and he died penniless. But he developed all these amazing technologies that could totally save this planet. And one of the things he did was he did a lot of experiments with electricity in fields, and he developed all these different coil designs. And so this is just a special coil design of many that he made, and we kind of did some variations on it. So you can stick Tesla coils in there. And Tesla coils, by the way, can generate scalar fields. So that's what it's doing. If you want to see some examples of that, if you go to pyridine.com, P-Y-R-D-Y-N-E. That's Fred Bell's website. Fred Bell just died a few weeks ago. But he was a brilliant scientist who came up with a lot of scalar technologies, some really cool stuff. Scalar jewelry. He's got these crystals. He's got like 50, 75-pound crystals, yay big, that you can buy for thousands of dollars. They're scalar wave generators. So if you got that kind of dough, you can stick a big crystal in your house and do all this stuff. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. Yes?
So the crystal, the bigger the crystal, the better, but the smaller the metal shavings, the better?
Yes.
And the fiberglass is there just to hold it all together?
Yes, and to act as a non-conducting space. You know, it's like if you just dumped it all together in a pot, there's not going to be enough separation and non-conduction in there. It's like this combination of ormus and conductors and non-conductors. And it also depends on how you layer it, how you mix it. And don't ask me what's the best way, because we're still experimenting with it. There's all these people that say all this stuff about it but don't believe it because they don't know what they don't know. Yes?
Let's say, for instance, the resin or whatever it is that holds it together, is there some that you should stay away from? Like caulking. Sounds like maybe caulking wouldn't work because it's like glue. Is there some that might not work?
Well, you want something that's going to hold together well, and these are pretty heavy. Like here, I mean, this is about 25 pounds. And, you know, you can pass this around, you can feel it. It's heavy. And that's another way, by the way, you can tell good organite. Good organite's heavy. So you need something that's going to hold all that heavy stuff together well and not fall apart. Caulk wouldn't do it.
Right. I was thinking of is there something that you should just stay away from that would like suppress it?
Oh, that would suppress it.
Right.
Probably metals. I mean, like if you, for example, if you coated it with a metal paint or, you know, dipped it in something metal, that might shield it. But in general, scalar waves will pass right through materials. Like it'll shoot right through your house. By the way, I haven't confirmed this, so I can't say that it affects the weather, but I had that big pyramid running in my house for several days. And it can take a few days for it to clear stuff out of the sky. And we have a lawn service, and the lawn guys come and they go, "Wow, man, it was really lucky we didn't have that storm." I'm like, "What storm?" They said, "Well, there's supposed to be this huge storm that's covering all the floor that's just supposed to wipe us out, but it didn't show up." It's like, really? That's cool. And then my bookkeeper comes, and she says the same thing. It's like, "Wow, man, it's really lucky that huge storm didn't come and wipe us out." Oh, I was like, "You heard it too?" She's like, "Yeah, it was supposed to just tear everything up, and it's like sunny outside." I'm thinking, wonder if this has anything to do with it. Because you can go on YouTube and you can see this. Just go in there and go on YouTube and search on Organite, and you'll see people, or Cloudbuster, and you'll see people making these devices and clearing the sky right before your eyes. And knocking chemtrails out of the sky. And what happens is you can tell there's a scalar vortex going on because those chemtrails, they're lines up in the sky, right? And what happens? They twist up. They twist into little pinwheels and then they disappear. Scalar vortex. You can test these simply by sticking them in your freezer over some water. Take like a Tupperware dish or something, 2 or 3 inches of water, stick it up over it on a tray or whatever, and let it freeze. And what you will see is, like I said, this donut-shaped bubbles if it's a good, strong organite. And I've got this on my Facebook page. You can see this. if the water has ormus in it, because we have well water and we're testing this with, it will make the water either creep up the side of the container, or it will create humps or stalagmites coming up out of the water. And that's how you know you've got, number one, you got ormus in your water, and you know you got a scalar field. So if you go to my Facebook page, you can see you can see examples of this. I've got a strong one and I've got a weak one and what they look like. And the strong one, there's this big hump of water crawling up the side of the container because it's anti-gravitational. The ormus is anti-gravitational, and in the presence of a scalar field, it wants to levitate. Shwing! How cool is that? And you can make it yourself in your Susie Homemaker oven. Yes?
When you say you wrap the crystal with would you use like a copper wire or a gold wire?
Yes.
Either one?
Yes.
Any kind of metal?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yes.
That's good.
You can use all of the above, yeah. You can use copper, aluminum, gold, uranium. Well, not uranium. No, you don't want to use radioactive stuff. But you can use rhodium, iridium, any of the platinum groups. This is going to cost you a bunch of money if you do. You could use gold wire. Gold has a particularly good effect with these things. So if you can get a little bit of gold and grind it up there. One thing you can do, you can buy gold leaf. And relatively inexpensive, like $50 you can get a package of gold leaf, which real gold, not the fake gold that's like $8 at Walmart. But you get real gold leaf and you can shred that up and mix it into it. And that will put the frequency of gold into it, and that's very healing as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this. You can take crystals and read about this stuff. There's all kinds of books about Atlantean technology, wrapping crystals with wires and things. And of course scientists are going to say it's total nonsense and it's pseudoscience. And it doesn't matter if it's putting you into deep sleep states and blocking EMF. And particularly like with these smart meters, I've been hearing people that are making these things and putting them on their smart meters and neutralizing their smart meter EMF. There's always a solution. How cool is that? To me, that's just ultra cool. I never ever have to worry about whatever comes down the crazy road that these people will conjure up. Because there's a solution already, yes.
The crystals, you just find, where do you find,
just Google it. Go to the Great Oracle Google and Google it.
You can buy them online?
You can buy them online all over the place. There's tons of people. eBay, there's people selling tons of it on eBay. There's crystal websites all over the place selling it.
And are there any in particular that you recommend as to the crystals, or just?
I like quartz because it's cheap and it's high in ormus. We know it's got ormus gold in it. I like amethyst because it's my birthstone and it's a healing energy. I like kyanite. Kyanite's a blue. It's real pretty. It's blue.
How do you spell that?
Kyanite. Yeah, get some books on crystals and read about the healing properties of crystals and just kind of intuit what appeals to you.
Okay.
And throw it in there. I met this guy who made where'd my stress shield go? Gimme, there it is. I met a guy who made a variation of this. It's not scalar, but it's electromagnetic using crystals and wire. So you don't have to use this expensive technology, you can make your own. This is $300, and it's worth every penny. It's actually cheaper. There's actually nothing on the market like it, but the closest thing to it is about $1,500. So, but you can make your own.
Excuse me, what kind of resin are you using? Because this is dark, and I've worked with resin before, that's why I'm asking.
That's fiberglass resin.
Oh, it's fiberglass.
But it's got all kinds of amazing stuff in it.
Okay. So you can just do fiberglass.
Yeah, you can do fiberglass, you can do acrylic, there's a whole litany of polycarbonate casting resins. We're going to be using a non-toxic plant-based resin. We're just prototyping with this because it's cheap and it's readily available. It's we can just get a
non-toxic resin?
There are non-toxic. Yeah, there's a company out in California that makes a non-toxic surfboard resin that's plant-based, but it's like 4 times as expensive as fiberglass. So prototyping, we're not going to use that.
What do the little red things? Just leave them there, or?
No, those wires connect to the stress shield.
Okay.
Yeah, this puts out a frequency, so we pull the antenna off of this and we hook that up, and that becomes the antenna for this,
okay.
Which is what this is. If you guys want to see this little flashing light, by the way, is just for looks.
Okay.
So people go, oh, cool, it's doing something. That doesn't do anything.
So that's basically the same thing?
This is a big piece of orgonite, and it's got, like I said, it's got It's got a big quartz crystal in here with a Tesla coil around it that's connected to a stress shield. It's got amethyst crystals all around it. Then it's got quartz crystals all around it. Then it's got copper particles all around it. Then it's got gold hiding in there. We've got gold particles hiding in there. And I think it's got some other metals in there, like maybe some brass and some steel or iron or something like that. And then we just put a stress shield circuit into it and plug it into a wall, and it's all wired up. And what that stress shield does, it doesn't really power it. It doesn't make it more powerful. It just puts a specific frequency into it. It puts the Schumann resonance into it. And we just know from experience that the Schumann resonance has all these really cool effects, like getting people into deep sleep states and de-stressing them and making plants grow better and making ferments grow better. So if you come to my talk tomorrow night about how to make your own high ormus probiotic antioxidant superfoods for pennies,
In your kitchen.
you can make one of these and stick it next to your ferment bucket, and your microbes are going to be happier, and they're going to eat more stuff, and they're going to make more ormus. And you're going to have a homeopathic solution that's going to be much more healing to your body. And you can do it all with a few holy hand grenades. And if you don't want to make some holy hand grenades, you can buy ceramics from Terohiga and do the same thing. There's all kinds of cool stuff. But you know, there are people making these kinds of scalar technologies, and now Gabriel Cousins is coming out with these scalar iodine. So it's not just iodine, it's been zapped with these scalar energies. You guys might have heard of Vitamineral Green from Health Force. You know Health Force, Jameis Sheridan. He's got a whole line of really good supplements. He's got a really cool one where he takes Klamath Lake algae and he zaps it with scalar energy, and then he dehydrates it at low temperature, and you get this amazing energized blue-green algae. It's called Elixir of the Lake. It's very cool. Well, you can do the same thing. Get yourself some algae, stick it in a bucket with one of these near it, do the same thing. Or you could grow your own algae or spirulina, or your own ferments, like Marcia. Marcia, what did you throw into your bucket?
I'm sorry?
What did you put into your bucket, that brew that you made?
I put azomite and turmeric.
She put azomite rock powder, turmeric, and then molasses and water and the culture.
Probiotic, yeah.
Yeah. And she got this, and you can go to her, by the way, you can go to her Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and search, is it okay to give it out? It's okay to give out your Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay. If you go to Facebook and you search on Marcia, M-A-R-C-I-A, Tardin, it's actually ethereal, E-T-H-E-R-A-L.
It's in my card.
Okay, and it's on her cards, but for people watching, Marcia, ethereal, E-T-H-E-R-A-L, Tardin, T-A-R-D-I-N. You'll find her Facebook page. She's got all kinds of pictures posted of this stuff. You know, she's one of the 5% that actually went and did it. And she's getting all these crazy results with it. And it looks like this super crazy, you know, bubbly brew, and she's taken it, and what happened? When you drank that stuff and you took it, what happened?
First I got very enthusiastic when I drink yours. So I said, oh, this is for me. Because I like kefir, I like kombucha, I like different things. So I said, this is for me. And I really felt very good. So every time you drink, I would begin like you said, a little spoon, a little cup. But it's good, so you feel good. So in the end, I drink more during the day.
Didn't you used to have bags under your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And the bags went away, which is usually kidney issues.
Dark circles.
Yeah, and the dark circles. So, yeah, exactly. And she made it for pennies in a 5-gallon bucket, you know. So that's another thing you can do. You can impart all these scalar frequencies into your supplements, which is what Gabriel Cousins is selling. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're talking about that ashram. You're talking about this big substance. What was it?
Monoatomic mercury.
Then you talked about earlier monoatomic is like a metal. I studied engineering too. I remember my metallurgy class.
Yeah. Metals. Yeah. Metals. You know, all the atoms are bound together in a grid of some type. Okay. And when it's monoatomic, the metals are not connected together, because what happens is when you zap them with certain energies, the electrons, for those of you into physics, the electrons on all of the metal atoms, they pull in real tight to the nucleus of the atoms, and it's like this. If you're sitting on a turntable and you got your arms out like this, and somebody spins you, right? And you're going like this, and then you pull your arms in, you speed up.
Right.
When you do that at an atomic scale, that electron, that atom goes from being, actually the electrons that are spinning around it, switch from being an electron into being a photon. That is like a dog turning into a cat. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in physics, but it does happen. And when that happens,
Quantum physics?
it is quantum physics. And when those electrons pull in and that atom starts spinning super fast, and those electrons just turn into photons, which is light, and then they become superconductors, and they get all these weird properties, and they become Ormus.
So how did you feel when you were around that 5'2"?
I wasn't there.
Oh.
I saw pictures of it. And for those of you that want to check this out, you can go to YouTube or you can go to Google and search on Shiva Lingam. SHIVA LINGAM. Yeah. And you can actually see, these yogis taking herbs and mixing herbs into liquid mercury with their hands. And it doesn't poison them because it turns into a monoatomic. And when it's in a monoatomic form, not only is it non-toxic, it's extremely healing. And I've met several people who have hung out with this yogi, and he made them mercury tea. He served them mercury tea. Monoatomic mercury tea.
What are some effects?
It radically enhances your consciousness. So it greatly expands your awareness. You get realizations, you get synchronicities. You ever done a sweat lodge?
Yeah.
Okay? What happens if you do a sweat lodge? You do a sweat lodge, and doesn't life kind of start taking on a new twist? Things start manifesting, things start happening, things change, things shift. That's what happens when you ingest these Ormus elements. Now here's the thing I'm going to warn people, because I tell people this all the time. There is natural Ormus and there are alchemical Ormus. And there are a lot of people out there teaching how to make alchemical Ormus. Bad idea. Because it's not a natural form of Ormus and it will whack you. You guys remember the James Ray Sweat Lodge debacle out in Arizona where, this big guru that was in the movie The Secret, James Ray, who was this big teacher of how to create your reality and law of attraction and all that. He has a sweat lodge in Sedona. He has 64 people in a sweat lodge, charging them thousands and thousands of dollars. And 3 people died and a whole bunch of people got sick and went to the hospital, and he got sued and went to jail and lost all his money. And wouldn't you know it, this is the kind of crazy Forrest Gumpian life that I have. Wouldn't you know that happened on the exact same day that I'm having a sweat lodge at my house with a Yaqui Indian chief with about 40 people. But we weren't packing them in and we weren't doing all the crazy stuff that James Ray was doing. But what James Ray didn't get was the power of consciousness. And this is what people that are telling you how to make alchemical Ormus don't get. They're usually young people, by the way, and they haven't played with this stuff enough. You can whack yourself big time, because what Ormus does is it shortens the time between thought and manifestation. So think about it this way. What if all of your dreams came true? And I mean, when you go to bed at night, everything you dreamt came true. Wouldn't be a pretty picture necessarily, would it? Right? It's like the more that you've worked on yourself, and the more that you've cleared yourself, and the more healing that you've done, and the more that you've gotten straight with life and yourself, then the less likely you're going to have a problem, right? But also, the less likely you are to need it. And the truth is that if you really have your act together, you don't need it. And if you don't have your act together, you better steer clear of it. However, you can get in these natural forms that will naturally enhance your awareness and your consciousness and uplift you and heal you and regenerate your tissue through photosynthesis and fermentation. That's easy. Sprouting, growing food, feeding your soil these microbes and these rock powders, taking a 5-gallon bucket and throwing turmeric and azomite and all these things into it. They're high in Ormus, aloe, whatever. All these things that we know are high in Ormus. Anything that's volcanic, throw it in there, ferment it, rot it down, and you got yourself a high Ormus natural brew that will not hurt you. And if you sit and do that, you'll start seeing a really cool expansion of your consciousness. You'll start seeing more and more synchronicities in your life, because that stuff is not just going to put Ormus in your body. It's going to detoxify you, it's going to heal you, it's going to regenerate you, it's going to do all of these things. And so it's going to be this natural process. It's the stuff that all these people traditionally throughout history have taught us. It's nothing new. It's yoga, it's Tai Chi, it's Qigong. It's eating right. It's eating live food. It's eating properly mineralized food. It's drinking spring water. It's doing all of these things. Meditation. When you meditate, what are you doing? You're sitting, calming down, quieting down, and you're focusing your consciousness and you're creating a stronger scalar vortex. So what happens when you get together with a bunch of other scalar wave generators in a sweat lodge, in a circle, you create one big fat scalar vortex. And native people know this. This is why you don't go messing around with sacred ceremonies like that unless you know what you're doing. And you follow their traditions. So I don't do these ceremonies myself. I call these people in who have it in their blood. They have the ancestry. They know this stuff. When I was hanging out with this Yaqui Indian chief, we had the best time because he would say stuff like, the earth eats blood. The earth eats blood. And I go, oh, how cool. What does the blood have in it? It's got iron. It's got Ormus iron. It's got all this Ormus stuff. It goes into the soil. What does it do? It hits the crystals in the soil. They're oscillators, they're resonators, they're high in Ormus. It rains on it, it puts this homeopathic frequency into the soil. So when women, for example, take their menstrual blood and mix it with water and they put it on their garden, they're homeopathically treating their soil. Native people know this stuff. So you don't have to worry about all this high-tech wizardry, blah, 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 blah. Organite. Just look at what ancient peoples have done throughout time. And just do that. We already know this stuff. It's common sense. You know? So, any other questions? We got to wrap it up. We got about 2 minutes. Yes?
This, you're familiar with Doug Morrison, the book How We Heal? Point holding for several hours? Great. You're the first person I find that. Do you anybody, I know these groups have been in the U.S. and now they're not in the U.S. and England and in Australia. Do you know anybody who's into that around here?
I don't know anybody in this country, but there's all kinds of interesting things everywhere. You know, it's like I got a call one time from a lady who was in San Diego, and she said, there's nobody here that's into raw food. What? The raw food king who's coming here is from San Diego, and this woman like, oh, there's nobody here. There are shamans and gurus and swamis and geniuses everywhere, all around you.
Daytona. That's
Yeah, I'm in Daytona Beach, Florida, biker capital of the world, right? And I ain't no genius, but I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And really, like, I went to the plumbing store in little old Edgewater, Florida, and I got like 60 feet of copper plumbing. And the guy says, oh, that's like $140. I said, okay, fine. He's like, really? What are you doing with it? I said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. He said, try me. I said, I'm going to modify the weather and knock chemtrails out of the sky. He's like, really? I said, yeah. So I started explaining it to him. He's like, wow, you know, well, we had this other scientist coming in here who's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, I believe it.
Okay, do you know that the Warm Mineral Springs that's next to you in Northport? Are you next to Northport?
In Northport? No, I'm not near there.
Oh, no.
But that's, yeah, there's a lot of springs around Florida.
Mineral Springs right there.
Yeah, and over near Fort Myers, kind of like northwest of there, there's a big spring there. And this is it. People come from... Is that it? Yeah, people come from all over the world there and get in these springs. Yeah, nobody in Florida knows this. People from Europe are coming here to heal themselves of like cancer by sitting in these springs. Why is that? What's in spring water? Ormus! Okay. Anybody else? Okay? All right. Well, then thank you very much for coming and listening. And